realized that I'm quite good at future traveling. Recently seen this in my meditation sessions, so I don't need a spaceship or a fancy suit or uniform, but I sit on my cushion and I start my meditation. And I think I'm going to meditate on the breath or bodhicitta or the Buddha. And sometime later, I don't often know how long, but I find myself planning what I'm going to do that day. And there's worry, and there's rumination, and there's not a lot of productivity involved in this. And I think I've seen a spike in this recently as we're coming towards the end of the year before we enter into winter retreat. And I have the thought, oh, there's a lot to do. I have to get a lot done and finished and wrapped up nice and neatly just how I want it. And a few days ago, I saw this building one day to the next, where I think with a few tasks at hand, I was like, how is this going to get done as I needed it to? And I could feel the tension in my body rising and my fuse getting a bit shorter when things didn't go as I expected, or impermanence happened, or people disagreed with me. And I got, oh, okay, I need to be really careful with this, because this will lead me into an area that I don't want to go, in terms of more strong afflictions and words coming out of my mouth that I don't want to happen and such, and then messes to clean up. And so sitting there on my cushion, kind of talking to myself, saying, okay, today I want to enter into this day differently, to not let this tension or anxiety continue or mount, at least stay level, not get worse, hopefully lessen. Also trying to see what was lying behind it, the thoughts that were fueling the afflictions, and to reason with this mind. And because these tasks need to be done, but it's a matter of how I do them and how I engage with them, how I relate to them, how I'm talking to myself about them. And looking at this, the thought was, well, I have to continue like this until it's done. And it's like, really? That's just insane to think that I was basically condemning myself to be anxious and tightly wound until everything was done, which will be perhaps a few weeks. And seeing that's how I was kind of talking to myself, or holding the bar that I was holding myself to. It's like, I cannot continue to do this for my own sake, but more so actually the sake of others who have to interact with me in this mind frame. Just to see that way of thinking was just putting myself in a certain form of hell and then dragging others along with me as I was in that state. And to come back to, so at that point I was able to kind of let it go, just to see that that's how I was pushing myself, holding myself to this. It's like, I don't agree to this thought. I don't agree to this presentation of the situation that I had unknowingly drawn myself. And to come back to what's been said many times, and what we're going to part of what we're going to recite today in the parting from the four clingings, is that the work's never done. There are always preparations. We're going to die in the middle of preparing for something. So the idea of rushing, pushing, planning until it's done is just unrealistic and unhelpful. Because even if one thing gets done, something else will arise that takes its place. And to look at that mind of worry, because I would never have called myself or thought that I was an anxious or worrisome person. That was my mother. That was outside something that I'm like, oh, that's not helpful. So to see inside myself, it's like, oh, because this in the last year, I've been able to see this much more clearly. I think the first year was attachment, and then the second few years here was looking at anger, and then the last years have been, anxiety. And to see worry is just a very skillful way to waste my time and accomplish nothing. because nothing gets done, but at the end of it, I'm utterly exhausted and I have no energy to actually do what I think I need to do or what I want to do. I'm just kind of flatlined because of the adrenaline and the energy it takes to think about this and to kind of get myself all tense, that to actually then enter in and do the things that I'm thinking about often doesn't happen. Or I'm too tightly wound to do it in a calm, relaxed, effective, spacious way that's looking at the situation in a broad way, taking into account all the different factors that come into play. And it was very interesting during the Shikshamana course where many of us got sick, and there were a few people standing that were functional to take care of the rest of the flock. And many of us, or those of us who were standing, commented that it was amazing how taking care of others gave energy as opposed to taking away from it. That there was joy and energy giving in bringing people food, in medicine, and doing their chores or doing their tasks and just coming together and working. And so in this, working with this mind of anxiety and worry and trying to counteract this task focusedness, it's also helped my mind to turn and think of others and do for others. As a way to get outside of myself, to see the broader sphere of reality in terms of what's going on, and to build joy and resilience, actually, to keep going and to be able to accomplish and bring about all that I want to do, which in itself is often for the benefit of others, but I lose that when I get so focused on getting it done as opposed to the why or the how. I'm not sure whether any of this is alive for anyone else here at the moment as we're moving towards winter retreat, but I thought to reflect on this. And yeah, to what I'm trying to come back to myself is to have, planning is helpful to be able to move forward and accomplish things that are beneficial to many people, but to have loose plans that are very flexible. But to have a very solid motivation for why we're doing it. To keep coming back to that as the guiding force. And then to have a very flexible mind to adapt to whatever arises that we don't actually, most of which we don't have control over. And then coming back to that warm heart that sees that people are so much more important than any task that is to be completed.